Thank you for your participation on today's webinar, HFMA Financial Review IRS 990 Preparation Review. My name is Jenna Davis, Manager of Chapter Operations, and I will be moderating today's call. If you have questions throughout the webinar, please type them into the Q&A pod and we'll address them during today's presentation. Today's session will count towards your chapter's DCMS education hours for 2018-2019, and chapters will receive 1 hour DCMS education credit for each attendee. At the end of the presentation, please take a few moments to complete the online evaluation. Your feedback is very important to us and is used to enhance future chapter leader webinars. And now it is my pleasure to turn the presentation over to Joyce Samowski, HFMA's Senior Vice President and Chief Financial Officer. Joyce, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jenna, and welcome everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us here at HFMA National. We want to spend some time today talking with you about the process that we utilize here to accumulate your information and prepare the 990s on behalf of your chapters. Many of you may or may not know, but you are all, every chapter is incorporated in the state of Illinois, and HFMA National takes on the responsibility of filing the federal tax return on behalf of the chapters, and we do it in a group return. So today's presentation is really about how we gather that data from you, how we assure the accuracy of it, and how we then compile it and then submit it. And so on the screen today you see that we have several other participants from our HFMA finance team. As Jenna introduced, I'm Joyce Samowski. I'm the Senior Vice President and Chief Financial Officer for HFMA, and I'm going to ask the other members of the team to introduce themselves as well. Steve, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hi, my name is Perla Gallegos. I have been with HFMA National for since actually October of last year. My background is in accounting, and most of my work experience has been in healthcare. I'll be your main support for chapter accounting and look forward to working with all of you.
My name is Bonnie Nolan, and I've been with HFMA about 2 years now. And I will be a backup to Perla, so if you need any additional help, please feel free to contact me.
Thanks, Bonnie. I'm Steve Seldevar. I'm the accounting manager for HFMA. I've been here a little bit under a year. I work with Bonnie and Perla and will serve as support for them, also for insurance inquiries, tax inquiries, and anything else that we can assist you guys with.
Very good. Thank you, team. So Jenna, can you advance the slide? Great. Thank you. So we are going to be talking today a lot about chapter finance information, but I want you to consider that where we say chapter, you can interchange the word region, because the regions have similar reporting responsibilities as well as chapters. So please don't think that if you're a regional treasurer that you don't have any work to do, because we are expecting the same kind of information from you as we are the chapter treasurers. So what we wanted to review with you today is really the financial review process that we at HFMA are asking you to go through at the chapter and regional level in order to accumulate the information that we need in order to file the 990. We also want you to understand a lot of the information that we gather for the 990, and we'll be trying to make that relevant to you in your chapters and regional levels, so you can understand the types of expenditures that we're looking for, and then where we need you to classify them on the forms. And then we want you to understand the documents that we're going to ask you to submit to us. One other comment I will make, and you will see throughout this presentation, that there are, you see an August 1st deadline. And I need to make sure people understand that that is a hard and a fast deadline. We cannot offer any extensions to that, because we at HFMA have a filing deadline for the 990. And therefore, in order for us to meet our deadlines, we need to make sure that you have all this information to us in a timely manner.
The outgoing treasurer has a few requirements to meet by August 1st upon exiting. Chapters that conduct the HFMA internal financial review must send a copy of the completed and signed financial review program to National by August 1st. Certifications due to National include No Education Foundation certification, Practice of Operating Policies, and the Independent Audit or Financial Review Program. Fiscal year 2018 Informational Form 990. As we close the year, please schedule a conference call or email myself, Perla, to discuss any issues that need further review. Submit the authorization for inclusion so National can complete the group return. Due date for 990 requirements. In order to successfully complete the 990 by August 1st, the onboarding treasurer, starting the new fiscal year, should enter the chapter budget in QuickBooks by June 1st. Since we are mentioning QuickBooks, you can access the QuickBooks How-To webinars on the Chapter Leader Webinar Center. The offboarding president or treasurer should complete the financial review form, authorization for inclusion, No Education Foundation certification, and the operating practice of policies by August 1st. Once National completes each 990 form, the treasurer should review and communicate any discrepancies by August 1st. No new board members and committee members serving the next fiscal year should complete the conflict of interest policy. Timeline. Fiscal year 18 ends May 31st, 2018. The 990 survey will be sent out to chapters on June 1st and will be due June 15th. This survey assists National in gathering necessary information for the Group 990 return. Chapter books are to be closed by June 15th. National will then begin to prepare the 990 Excel form. During this time, some treasurers will be in communication more than others with National as questions arise and as the financial review comes to a finish. National will send the 990 form to each chapter for review by July 15th. Due August 1st, all required forms signed, the financial review, and the 990 worksheet.
So you see on the screen here that there is a link at hfma.org chapter/leader/treasurer. That is your treasurer's toolkit, and if you haven't visited that site, I would recommend that you do. On that site, and we're going to show you a screenshot next. Jenna, if you could advance. So this is the screenshot of the website, and on it you will see a variety of different line items, both chapter and treasurer. These are all the documents that we're going to need you to complete and to send to National by August 1st, and you see the due date there listed as August 1st. These particular documents, the HFMA team is going to walk you through as we go through this seminar today. Next slide. So one of the things that we're asking you to do is to complete an annual financial review. And some of you may wonder, why is it that we're asking you to do this? One reason is that we are a financial management professional association, and so one of the things that we want to make sure is that we have accuracy in all of our financial records. And so we're asking you to go through this review in order to make sure that you have internal controls in place within your chapter, as well as asking you to verify certain elements of the information that's included in your records that you're going to be submitting to National in order to complete the 990s. Think of this as sort of a mini audit. The fact that you do this and you provide documentation that you have and certify that you've performed these tasks gives us at National a level of assurance that we can then in good conscience, sign the Group 990 return. And so what constitutes a financial review? It's one of two things, either an independent audit, and several chapters have chosen historically to have their books audited by an outside organization. This is perfectly acceptable. And if you choose to do that, that is, you can share with us the opinion from that, and that will serve it to satisfy this requirement. Or you can perform an internal review within the chapter by someone independent from the chapter officers, who can certify that the steps have been performed, and that there is, and assure that there is accurate financial reporting. And so the HFMA team is now going to walk you through the details associated with first the annual financial review, if you choose to do the internal assessment, and the other documents that you'll be asked to file.
Perfect. Thank you, Joyce. So as Joyce mentioned, your chapter will choose to either have an external audit or use the HFMA standard template for the financial review. What we're going to review today is the HFMA template for financial review. So the chapter will want to identify an independent, financial-oriented person with no direct relationship to the chapter's financial activity or access to QuickBooks to perform this. One thing to note is that it is a requirement that the first and last month of the fiscal year, so being June 2017 and May 2018, it's required that those 2 months be part of the financial review. And then it is up to the reviewer to choose any 3 months in between from July 2017 to April 2018 to include in the review, for a total of 5 months being reviewed. Chapters that conduct the HFMA internal financial review must send a copy of the completed and signed financial review program to HFMA by August 1st. The document must be scanned and emailed to accounting@hfma.org, or you can also fax that over to us. Chapters that choose to have an independent audit or financial review performed need only to complete and send the confirmation of chapter fiscal year end review requirement. Again, that's due by August 1st. So if you choose to have an outside CPA firm conduct your financial audit, you don't need to complete the entire 10-page packet. You just need to sign and agree to that last form stating that your chapter has undergone an audit or review. The chapter's board of directors should review the results of the annual financial review or audit. Whether the chapter conducts an independent audit or the HFMA internal financial review, the chapter is responsible for keeping a copy of the audit or review and supporting work papers in a permanent file. The financial review should cover the period of the fiscal year that just immediately ended. So again, that's June 2017, ending May 2018. And then I just want to mention the annual financial review template is in the Treasurer's Toolkit that Joyce had mentioned. So feel free to go ahead and download that from the Treasurer's Toolkit from the link that Joyce provided. So now what we're going to do, the next few slides, we're going to actually go through the financial review template. So here, the first thing that the reviewer will go through is an internal controls questionnaire. The following questions are to be directed to the HFMA chapter treasurer and or administrative support staff. If the treasurer isn't the sole person taking care of the QuickBooks, or if you have another volunteer who assists with the financial activity, these questions should be directed towards them. So what the reviewer needs to do for the internal questionnaire is basically ask the following questions and document the answers. Some examples of questions are, who is responsible for making deposits to the chapter bank account? And then you'll see on the right-hand column there, the reviewer simply needs to check whether it's the treasurer, a paid administrator, or if it's someone else, they would choose other and then provide a brief explanation. Another example of a question is, who maintains the chapter record of receipts? And again, in the right-hand column, the reviewer would simply check who is responsible for that or provide an explanation if it is someone not listed. So on this screenshot, you won't see it, but there is a section towards the bottom to go ahead and make any comments or concerns with any internal controls that the reviewer deems necessary. And then there is also information at the bottom telling the reviewer where they can send this information to. Again, it can be either faxed or scanned to HFMA National at accounting@hfma.org. But continuing on with the internal control questionnaire, the next section is related to cash disbursements. The initial section we just went through was in relation to receipts and cash collection. So again, there's just more questions that the reviewer needs to pose to the treasurer and or administrative staff. Samples of these questions are: who is responsible for preparing checks? Who is responsible for preparing checks and maintaining the paid bill vouchers? Then they'll go ahead and answer in the right-hand column again. Are bank accounts and credit card statements reconciled at least quarterly? They could answer yes or no, and if no, we ask that they please provide comment as to why these items are not being reconciled on at least a quarterly basis. One item I want to point out is item number 8. You will see here that this is not a yes/no type of question. So the question is, if financial records are kept on a computer, what backups are being maintained? Are the backup files tested to ensure content viability? So in this case, it's more of a commentary. So rather than choosing simply yes or no, the reviewer would get commentary from the treasurer or administrative staff and then provide their comments there. Okay, and then the final part of the internal control questionnaire is related more so to policies and procedures. Samples here include the record retention and destruction policy. This is one of the forms that the treasurer will need to sign for the coming year. Also the whistleblower policy, conflict of interest policy. So this questionnaire here is basically determining whether the policies are in place, if they're being adhered to, and if not, we would need to explain why and just detail and document any discrepancies from HFMA or chapter policies. At the bottom of this page, it's not presented on the slide, but again, there's a section for comments, and then there's also a section for signature from the financial reviewer. So they would sign this, and then this is part of the packet that they would then return to HFMA National, supporting that the financial review has been completed. So once the internal control questionnaire is completed, now we get into some more transactional testing type financial reviews. So under Program 1 is related to cash receipts. So some examples here of what we're asking is basically looking into the cash receipts and determining whether we feel the operations are adequate or not. One item here is questioning, are all remittances, including cash, received and deposited promptly and recorded correctly? So the reviewer would review the deposit slips, review the bank statements, and determine whether they feel that all cash collected is being deposited and recorded promptly. So then the work paper reference would be the deposit slips, the bank statements, anything else that they use to come to that conclusion. Another example is the annual chapter rebate from HFMA National properly accounted for? So again, a copy of the check, any sort of support, email, or communication from National explaining to chapters how to book that, and then of course the GL showing that it was booked appropriately. The next section deals more with the review and consideration of any prior year items that were documented. So one of the items there is for the reviewer to determine if any deficiencies noted from the prior year have been addressed and resolved. So the work papers they would have there are, the financial review from last year, which highlights the initial problem, and then any new policies or procedures that have been implemented and enforced to, mitigate any risk that the reviewer from last year problem. And then finally, towards the bottom, this is more related to unusual items that the reviewer would find in terms of cash receipts. So one example is for the reviewer to review the check or cash records of receipt for any unusual items, such as large amounts or entries not related to cash. So again, work paper references would be checks themselves, bank statements, any sort of GL entries that don't make sense, that are in cash but not cash related, and then just an explanation from the treasurer or administrative support as to why these items took place. And then at the bottom for program 1, there's a place for the reviewer's comments, and then also signature lines for completion. And then again, please send these to accounting@hfma.org. So moving on to program number 2, it's pretty similar to program number 1, just in this case we are focused more on cash disbursement. So we basically want to be sure that the proper authorizations for disbursements are there. We want to be sure that the supporting documents agree with the checks that were cut and whatever support that the treasurer or administrative staff is providing to the reviewer. And then also we'll do some testing in QuickBooks. One of the items on here is to test the check number sequence in QuickBooks. There shouldn't be any, you shouldn't have checks 1 through 10 and then skip to 15. The reviewer would want to say, hey, what happened to check number 11, 12, 13, and 14? So they'll be looking for discrepancies like that. They'll be testing board travel, again, testing the support and approval, where the 5-star hotel is approved by the board, did it have the proper authorization, and so forth. And again, there's a comment section towards the bottom of program number 2, and then the reviewer should also just sign and date that program number 2 related to cash disbursements was completed as part of their financial review. The next slide is program 2 continued. Here we kind of go more into credit cards, testing signatures on paid checks. So for work paper reference, we would want to, have the physical check themselves, possibly a copy of authorized signers for the bank account, just to be sure the correct people are signing the checks that are on file with the bank. With credit cards, we'll want to have, one of the items here is who approves the monthly credit card invoice statement. So we'll want to have a policy or procedure in place for that. That's provided to the reviewer. And then another question is, are separate HFMA monthly credit card statements provided to both the chapter treasurer and the chapter president? This kind of just gives the reviewer some assurance that there is separation of duties. There's more than one person reviewing, authorizing, and that's aware of the charges going on within the chapter. So again, there's a comment section and signature section at the bottom of that form. And then program number 3 is related to your bank account and bank reconciliation processes. The objectives of the bank reconciliation financial review are to establish that errors which may have been made in the recording of cash or credit card transactions have been corrected. The correct cash balance is recorded in the general ledger and in the financial statements. So some items here that we will be reviewing is we're asking for the reviewer to interview chapter personnel, whether it be the treasurer or administrative staff, to understand their procedures that are in place. Work papers for that would be any standard operating procedures, any sort of workflows or authorization flows that are in place for that. And then we're also asking for the reviewer to obtain copies of bank reconciliations for all accounts for the respective period to be tested. So the work papers, again, would be obviously the reconciliation and then the supporting bank statements. And if there's any reconciling items, any deposits in transit or things like that, the reviewer would ask for copies of the checks or the cleared checks if it was something that goes into the next period. Another item is to interview the chapter personnel responsible for preparation, approval, and recording of documentation for all cash disbursements. So again, this is more of a commentary. The interviewer will go ahead and interview the appropriate staff, document the commentary and what they heard from the staff, and determine whether they feel that is adequate for proper procedures. And then another example is to trace the account balance for QuickBooks and the general ledger back to the chapter checkbook and to the financial statements. So basically that's making sure that we agree on all ends, that we agree in QuickBooks, in the general ledger, and then also with the bank statement as well. And again, there's a comment section and area for signature at the bottom stating that this was completed. And then the final steps for the bank reconciliation review are related more so to subsequent items. So example is trace a list of outstanding checks to the subsequent period bank statement to determine if they have cleared. So basically at the end of the year, if we have a bunch of expenses accrued or we say that they're going to clear the next period, we want to be sure that they were actually cut and do clear out within a reasonable period of time. So again, we would use the check register and bank statement for things like that. Another item is to examine and verify all bank transfers within 5 days of cutoff. I'm not sure that many chapters do bank transfers. I believe a majority of the chapters use checkbook. So if that's applicable, we ask that the reviewer do that. If not, you can certainly just write not applicable or give a reason why bank transfers does not pertain to the review. So again, at the bottom of this is a comment section and signature section. That completes the financial review template. Once that financial review is complete, there is a form. Again, this is online in the Treasurer's Toolkit. It's called Confirmation of Chapter Fiscal Year-End Financial Review. So once the reviewer completes that, we'll actually need the treasurer and president to fill out this form. So you'll want to fill in your chapter name, your chapter number, and then choose whether you had an independent audit or if your chapter chose to go with the HFMA financial review template. So you'll make that check right in the middle there. And then basically, as the treasurer and president, you will sign the bottom of this form stating that your chapter has had the financial review program completed in its entirety and that the results have been communicated to the chapter audit and finance committee and or the chapter board. The total financial review template consists of 8 separate pages. All 8 pages need to be turned in with this final authorization form by August 1st. And again, just so everyone understands, August 1st is a hard deadline. Unfortunately, we are not able to extend past August 1st, as this would then push back our deadline on a national level.
All right, thank you, Steve. The 990 detail information, National will review and use the balance sheet and income statement to populate the 990 form for each chapter. We ask that the treasurers review and communicate any errors or discrepancies to National by August 1st for accuracy and completeness of the 990 form. The next few slides will take us through the first few sections of the 990 form. As we go through the 990 form, please keep in mind that this is an example and your individual information will look different. Please refer to the highlighted information. Confirm your chapter's name, federal ID number, and tax-exempt status, which remains the same across board. Within the first section, please indicate the treasurer's information and the member maintaining the accounting records. If same as treasurer, please indicate same as above. Following are general questions asking to indicate the number of independent voting members, total number of employees, and volunteers for your organization. You will also see these questions in the 990 survey that will be sent later this week. Answer the question, has your chapter been offered charitable contributions from interested clients or vendors, and have you specified those funds can only be recognized as sponsorship receipts? The answer is typically no, but if there is uncertainty, please check with us. Following next is the first section of the balance sheet. As you can see, fiscal year 17 information will be available. In this section, Included are all of your assets that include cash, accounts receivable, prepaid expenses, and investments. For cash, most have a checking and a money market account. This year, we'll see more dollars in prepaid expenses due to CVent. Following is the liabilities and chapter equity. For liabilities, most do not have much activity flowing as accounts payable. Please remember, for year-end, chapters are to operate on an accrual basis. Please accrue for any expenses related to fiscal year 18 that have not yet been recorded.
Thanks, Perla. This is Bonnie, and I'm going to be covering the income statement portion of the 990. An easy way to verify your 990 is to print a copy of your profit and loss statement in QuickBooks. You can go right into QuickBooks. On the left-hand side, you'll see Reports. Click on that. Then in the middle of the screen, you'll see Balance Sheet, and then Profit and Loss, and there's a green star next to each. If you just click on those, you can bring up either your balance sheet or your profit and loss statement, verify the dates, and print it out. The 990 follows the statement very closely. There are 3 categories of revenue. Category 1 is educational programs and related events. That includes education and meeting income. Many of you may have a fall institute or a winter conference, webinars, whatever your particular chapter, whatever kind of meetings and educational events that your chapter has. You may have a golf outing, or you may have social events or networking events. Category 2 is your dues rebated from national, and this is reported at the gross amount. Category 3 is your sponsorship, and we want to include only the sponsorship revenue and no advertising revenue. So your sponsorship, meeting, and advertising revenue are all reported separately. One way to determine if you have advertising, if you are directing your reader on your newsletter or on your website to a company website, that's not considered advertising. If the company is promoting a product or service, providing a contact name and phone number or email, that would be considered advertising. Another item is if you have predetermined rates, perhaps a rate card for advertising, that also would be included, considered advertising. Advertising is unrelated to the main purpose of HFMA. It's classified as unrelated business income. HFMA chapters are exempt because of the IRS volunteer exemption. Most chapters in the past have not had any or very little advertising income. If you have any questions about that, please contact Perla or myself or Steve, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. Now looking at the 990 form, you can see that it's the income statement, and the first 3 items there are the things we just talked about. You can see the educational program revenue, the dues rebated from national, and the sponsorship revenue. Then also there's categories of advertising for your newsletter, your membership directory, and website advertising. Some other types of program service revenue, some examples would be maybe you got a rebate from your credit card company, or you collected chapter dues. The next section is your investment income. Some chapters may have investment income, some chapters may not. And you may be receiving dividends, or you maybe earn some interest related to those investments. This section up next here is the realized gains and losses on investments. You would only have a realized gain or loss if you sold or dispersed of a particular investment. It would not include any unrealized gains or losses. Some other types of miscellaneous revenue would be a deposit adjustment from a prior year, perhaps bank interest on a savings account or a money market account. There are 4 categories of expenses. The first category would be general office and administrative expenses. These are expenses that aren't related to a specific event. Some examples are your credit card or bank fees, if you have storage fees for off-site storage facility, General sponsorship expenses, that would be something that happens or possibly for all of your events. Supplies, copying, or miscellaneous and other administrative expenses. The second category is your educational programs and related events. These expenses are related to a particular educational program or event. Rental of the facility, speaker, sponsorship expenses, supplies, miscellaneous and other administrative expenses specific to that educational program, social event expenses, or golf outing expenses. The third category are awards, prizes to the board members, scholarships, or membership awards. Category 4 is information technology, purchases and repairs of hardware, purchases and updates of software, support services such as maintaining your website. The next slide is an example here of your expense section for the 990. At the top, you see the other wages and salaries and payroll taxes. This would only be applicable to chapters that have employees, so that wouldn't apply to 99.9% of the chapters. I think there is one chapter that does have an employee, so they would fill out that top section. The next section, the fees for services, are for outside services. So possibly your audit fees for your audit or financial review. You might have outside consulting fees or maybe administrative assistant fees. Advertising and promotion, these are primarily related to your newsletter or your membership directory or possibly any website advertising. Below that are your general administrative and office expenses, your information technology expenses, and your occupancy or rent expense for your office. On the next slide, we have your travel expenses for board directors and committee meetings, committee members, educational programs and related events expense. So they might be chapter educational events, member education expense or awards. Insurance expense would include your national insurance expense or other insurance expenses that the chapter may have. Miscellaneous expenses, for example, a regional assessment for expenses at the regional level. Year-end accrual accounting. Cash accounting is used throughout the year for the chapter. You recognize revenues when received and expenses when paid. At the end of the fiscal year, the chapters operate on an accrual basis. This is required by the IRS, and you want to accrue expenses that occurred in fiscal year 18, but perhaps you haven't paid them yet. You might not have received the bill yet, but you know that they belong in fiscal year 18. You also want to verify your prepaid and accrued expense balances to make sure that they've been updated. For example, your C-Vent, have you recognized the proper amount of expense for the month for the C-Vent? Deferred revenue would be any revenue you received for future events.
Thank you, Bonnie. As we continue with the 990 form, some chapters have investments, and so the form automatically populates the beginning equity balance for those that do. Please be sure the variance at the bottom is 0. If not, you will need to reconcile this difference and make necessary adjustments in QuickBooks. Following would be where chapters would list the funds that make up the companies that make up their investment portfolio. As you can see, here's some examples: Vanguard, MetWest, PIMCO. Those are just some companies. And lastly, chapters should complete this table to list the 5 highest compensated independent contractors or vendors. We did list some examples that list the name of the business and the address. the description of services, and the compensation.
Thanks, Perla. The next one we're going to go over is some of the forms that have to be returned by August 1st. And the first one is the chapter information and HFMA group information return. This is needs to be filled out to be included in the HFMA Group 990 tax return. It's really important that you remember that chapter name so that we know when we get this form back who it belongs to. And it should be signed by the off-boarding president and treasurer. The next one is the certification of chapter organization, and this certifies that the chapter does not have an educational foundation and operates as a 501c3 certification, under a 501(c)(3) certification. It should be signed by the off-boarding president and treasurer, and again, it's very important that you remember to put the chapter name and number on it. The operating policies include your conflict of interest. This is signed by the new board members and committee members and directors. It also needs to be signed by any volunteers who would have authority to approve expenditures. Send the signature page to HFMA National Office. You also must sign the retention and destruction policy and whistleblower policy and the operating policies. And these are signed by the off-boarding president and treasurer. The next one is your operating policies. Again, please remember the chapter name and number, and this is signed by the off-boarding president and treasurer. These are all due by August 1st. And here again is the chart that Perla went over with you earlier. The onboarding treasurer completes the budget. This does not have to be turned into us, but it should be in QuickBooks. The off-boarding president and treasurer should sign and complete the financial review, the authorization for inclusion, the 501c3 certification, and operating practice of policies by August 1st. The off-boarding treasurer should share the informational Form 990 with the board by August 1st, and the new board members and committee members should sign the conflict of interest. And again, those can all be faxed into us, or you can send them by email to accounting@hfma.org. A 990 survey will be sent to the chapters on June 1st. This survey helps National gather all the background information we need to complete the Group 990 return. And this is due back by June 15, 2018. If you have any questions or concerns about the survey or you get stumped by anything, please contact us so that we can help you. Your staff contacts for accounting and insurance issues would be Steve Saldivar, and his phone number is there, 800-252-4362, extension 319. For QuickBooks, Perla at 316 extension, or me at 364 extension, or you can email any of us at accounting@hfma.org. Immediately following this session, you will be getting an evaluation sent to you electronically. The feedback, again, is very important, and we really appreciate it so that we can improve programs or any other programs that we do after this. Thank you for attending. We appreciate your comments. And if you have any issues or concerns, please don't hesitate to contact us.
Okay, thanks, Bonnie. So that's the end of our webinar. So again, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to reach out to any one of us, and we can certainly address those for you. We do still have a few questions in our Q&A file open. We will take these offline and provide you the answers via email. So if your question wasn't answered, just note that we will be answering those for you shortly.